Good morning, Year 1 and Year 2. Welcome to your Tuesday reading lesson with me, Mr. Phillips. I hope you're doing alright. I'm in a different room again with the horrible pastely green coloured wall. we're redecorating the house, so it's not going to look like this for long, but yeah, so you got this lovely background today. Hope you're doing well. Don't forget, it's been a few days since we've done a reading lesson. Go down into the description and get yourself a copy of the book that we're looking at today. The book we're reading today is this one, A Robot Girl Ruined My Sleepover, written and illustrated by Rebecca Patterson. Okay, so I wonder if you can remember the different parts of our reading lesson. The first one we do is we always predict. We say predict, I predict that. Okay, now I think with this book, A Robot Girl Ruined My Sleepover, I think the title tells us quite a lot about what we think is going to happen. So what we want to do is try and add on more story, because I think we can tell from the book that there's going to be a robot girl and at some point she's going to ruin a sleepover of the main character probably. So that is obvious. So what we want to do is add more information. So why does the girl have a robot? What was the robot for? How did she ruin the sleepover? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is, using the sentence I predict that, can you have a go at telling me what you think is going to happen in this story, adding on more information than just the robot was going to ruin the sleepover, okay? Can you pause the video there and have a little go at writing your prediction, I predict that. Off you go for me now. Okay, so I wonder what you predicted. Let's have a little look at the title again. Alright, so having a look at the girl and what I assume to be the robot here, well, they're holding hands, so obviously they're best friends maybe. So maybe the main character was a bit lonely and didn't have a best friend, so got a robot to be their best friend. Maybe they became really popular then, and then maybe the robot started to do things that embarrassed the girl. Maybe that's what happens. I predict that's what's going to happen. So that's quite a lot to write down. So I predict that the main character doesn't have many friends. So she gets herself a robot best friend. So that's the first part. She doesn't have many friends. She gets herself a robot best friend. Then she becomes really popular. At a sleepover, the robot starts to do very embarrassing things, which ruins the girl's popularity. There we go. Whoa. That was a long predict, wasn't it? I predict that the main character doesn't have many friends, so she gets herself a robot best friend. Then she becomes really popular. At a sleepover, the robots start to do very embarrassing things, which ruins the girl's popularity. So all of that I've just got from that picture, and that's what I think's going to happen. I'm just predicting. It doesn't matter if I'm right, it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. So hopefully you've got a prediction down as well now. You might think something completely different. You might think that maybe the robot is a girl in her school, possibly, or you might think the robot has been sent specifically to ruin her sleepover. Whatever you think. Okay? Right. It's time to have a little bit of a read of our text. So let's get it up. Here it is. A robot girl ruined my sleepover. Now it's quite a few pages, so we're going to try and get through them. If you want to read along, you can switch out of this tab, go and look at your own copy of the text on lovereadingforkids.co.uk, and you can just listen as I'm reading it if you want to. Here we go. This is where we're going to start off. Chapter 1. "Hurry up, Gus," I yelled from the car. "I do not want to be late." My little brother Gus had spent the last 5 minutes rolling about on the launch pad, having a massive strop about not being allowed to take Sparks, our cyborg cat, in for show and tell. "Why not?" he was yelling. "I don't see why not." "Because he's worth a fortune and he's not a toy," said Mum, getting into the car. Gus stopped rolling, but he was still just lying there, looking up at all the cars in the sky. "I'm counting to 3, and then I'm flying off," said Mum, firing up the jets. Gus turned his head to look at us and scratched his ear. I sighed and folded my arms and said to no one, "I cannot tell you how much I'd prefer a big sister called Tamara." Mum started counting. 1, 2, and placed her finger dramatically over the lift-off button. Gus got to his feet, dragged his bag across the floor and clambered in next to me. "Shove up, Bogey McScruff-pants," he said. "Gus," said Mum, smiling a little as she flew up to join the other cars in the fly zone. Give you a second to look at that picture there. And that one as well. Gus admired the reflection of his chubby face in the curved glass of the windows. "Your best friend Bianca said I'm the cutest kid in year 1. I ignored him and carried on looking out of the window, looking at the buildings and trees. Gus carried on. 8.5 people in my class want to marry me already. No one wants to marry you, Lila," he said, prodding me. "Good, 'cause I don't want to get married," I snapped back. "How can half a person want to marry you?" laughed Mum as we landed on the lime green How can a half a person want to marry you? Laughed Mum as we landed on the Lime Grove Edu Hub launch pad. That's a hard bit to say. "Evan is the half because he's in love with me and Laura," explained Gus breezily as he jumped out. Mum did her "isn't he just adorable" face at me. I ran down the launch pad steps. In the distance, my best friend Bianca waved. She ran towards me as I charged across the playground. "Hi, Lila," she yelled. "Hi. Hey, I made you this," I said, "at the weekend." I gave Bianca the tiny model of her I'd made out of the clay and move set. I'm quite good at making models, and this stuff is good. Once the model is dried, it can shuffle about a few steps by itself. She looked at the little figure walking about in her palm. "Ah, that's cute," she laughed, "but I'm not that lumpy. How big did you make my ears? And look at my nose." "Oh, it's pretty accurate," I laughed, and ran on towards the portals. Bianca chased behind me laughing, saying she'd do one of me and include my big bug eyes. We sat down on the wall giggling and calling each other bug eyes and lumpy in stupid voices. Mercedes turned to us. "Gonna be interesting today." "What is?" I said. "The visitors." And we're going to leave it there. There is actually about 8 more pages of this book in the extract. So if you want to carry on later on after the lesson and carry on reading this story and get someone to read it to you, you absolutely can. So that was the first chunk of chapter 1 of A Robot Girl Ruined My Sleepover. Okay, let's go back to the questions and have a little look at what words we need to clarify. So these are the 4 words I've picked out for us today. We've got strop, cyborg, clambered, and admired. Let's start with the first one. Strop. It said Gus was having a massive strop because he couldn't take Sparks, the cyborg cat, into school. What do you think strop means if you're having a strop? Pause the video there, write down what you think strop means, or tell the person you're with. Okay, off you go. Okay, what did you get for strop? Well, strop, to have a strop, means to have a bit of a sulk, to get into a mood, yeah? So having a strop is to have a big sulk and get in a mood, have a bit of a tantrum, yeah? To be very, very moody and shout and stamp your feet and huff and puff. You might get in a strop if there's something you don't want to do, or if you're not allowed to do something. You might get really stroppy, get really moody and annoyed and angry. That's what strop means. The next word is cyborg. And the reason Gus was having a strop is because he couldn't take his cyborg cat with him to school. What do you think cyborg means? Pause the video there and have a little write down of what you think that might mean. Okay, so you should have now written what you think cyborg means. Well, Gus is a cyborg cat, and that just means that he is a robot cat. A cyborg is a different word for a robot. Okay? And I think robots and cyborgs are going to feature heavily in this story, because we know for a fact there's a robot girl, isn't there? And there's a cyborg cat. Next one is clambered. After Gus had finished having a strop about not taking his cyborg cat, he clambered into the spaceship. What do you think clambered means? Pause video there and write it down, or tell the person that you're with. Off you go. Okay, so if Gus clambered into the spaceship, that means that he climbed in awkwardly. To clamber is to get in or to climb into somewhere, but it's a bit awkward, it's a little bit uneasy, yeah? If you climb something, then you might be able to do it fairly easy, but if you clambered, it's a bit of a struggle, a little bit difficult, not particularly easy, yeah? So climbed in awkwardly. And last one, admired. It's said that Gus he admired himself in the little spaceship's mirror, windows, wasn't it? He was looking out the window, but he was admiring his reflection in the windows. What does admired mean? Pause the video there and write down what you think it means. Okay, so admired means to look at something or someone, or to think of something and someone in a really positive way. So it's to look or think about someone or something in a really positive, and that means good, way. Okay, so if I admired a person, when I think about them, I think, yeah, that person's really good, I admire them. Okay, or if it's a thing, you know, or I admire his skills being a thing, or I admire the house, or something like that. To look at something or someone in a really good and positive way. There we go, we've clarified all our vocabulary today. We've done strop, cyborg, clambered and admired. So hopefully in there's at least one new word that you've learnt, and you can now apply that new word in your writing, in your reading somewhere else, okay? Okay, it's time for the questions. Now, if I've edited that right, you won't notice, but my whole computer just broke then. So I lost the recording, I lost everything. So it's actually been about 30 minutes since we last did the clarify section, but if I've edited it together properly, that should have just flicked over like that. There we go. Yep, there's our clarify. Cool. So we're moving on to the questions now, okay? And we've got 3 questions because they're a little bit trickier. Let's have a look at the first one. It says, if Gus has a strop because he can't take his cat to school, what does this tell us about what kind of character Gus is? So basically, even though that's quite a long question, it's asking us to say, because of this action, because of Gus having a strop, which we now know means to have a tantrum or a bit of a mood, what kind of character does that make Gus? Does it make him a kind and caring character? Does it make him a thoughtful and brave character? Not really. What kind of character is Gus based on the fact they had a strop because he can't take his cat to school? Pause the video there and have a little write down of what you think. Okay. So, like I said, he's not a caring and thoughtful character, or a brave or, adventurous character because of this. It just shows us that he's a bit maybe, now don't worry if you don't get the exact same words as me, maybe a bit of a moody, spoilt, maybe a bit of a naughty character, yeah? Naughty, spoilt, moody, those kind of negative words because he's having a strop about something that really doesn't matter. Yeah, he's showing he's not very thoughtful to other people. So if you've got some words along, you don't have to be exactly those words, but if you've got some words along those lines, then well done. Next one, it has this, at the beginning of it, it says look at page 2. Because this story we've read is about 4 or 5 pages, we have to know where to look for certain questions. So this one says look at page 2. It says tell me 2 things from the text that show us Gus and Lila did not get along. I was on the wrong story then. 2 things from page 2 that shows Gus and Lila did not get along. We're on page 3 there. So this is page 2. I'll read this whole little extract for you and then tell me 2 things that show us Gus and Lila don't get along. Gus turned his head to look at us and scratched his ears. I sighed and folded my arms and said to no one, I cannot tell you how much I prefer a big sister called Tamara. Mum started counting. 1, 2, and placed her finger dramatically over the lift-off button. Gus got to his feet, dragged his bag across the floor and clambered in next to me. Shove up, bogey muck-scruff pants, he said. Gus, said Mum, smiling a little as she flew up to join the other cars in the fly zone. Okay, from that section there, can you point out for me 2 things that happen that show us Gus and Lila don't really get on? Pause the video there and have a little write of those 2 separate things. Okay, so one thing that happens is this first thing here. Now this is quite a difficult one to spot. I'm not sure how many people have got this one. Lila says, I cannot tell you how much I prefer a big sister called Tamara. So the first thing is, Lila says she'd rather have a big sister than Gus. Because Gus is her little brother. Lila says she would rather have a big sister. That's one thing that shows us they don't get along. And the other one is this one here, when Gus calls her Bogey Muck Scruff Pants. So Gus calls Lila a mean name. So both of those things there show us that the children don't really get along very well. Last question, it says, name one thing that Bianca thought was wrong with the model. So what we need to do is go back to our text. Now I know the model happened on the last page that we read. So skip down to the last bit, which is this bit. And here is the bit about the model. I'll read this bit to you and then tell me one thing. I think it mentions a couple of things, but just give me one thing that's wrong with the model, okay? I gave Bianca a tiny model of her made out of my clay and move set. I'm quite good at making models, and this stuff is good. Once the model is dried, it can shuffle about a few steps by itself. She looked at the little figure walking about in her palm. Ah, it's cute, she laughed, but I'm not that lumpy. How big did you make my ears? And look at my nose. Okay, from that little extract there, can you tell me one thing that Bianca thought was wrong with the model? Pause the video there and have a little go at doing that for me now. Just one thing that Bianca thought was wrong. Okay, so Bianca actually lists 3 things down here, doesn't she? She says that the model makes her look lumpy, that her ears are too big, and there's something wrong with her nose. So you can have any of those answers. I'm going to put, she thought the ears were too big, but you could have any of those 3 answers. Well done with your work on these questions. Hopefully you got a few of them right and you understood where those answers were. The last task, which I always leave you to get on with by yourself, is this one. I want you to think about the world that Lila and Gus live in, which is obviously the future with spaceships and cyborg cats. Would you like to live there? and why. So if yes, tell me why with a because, and if no, tell me why with a because. And don't forget to write that answer down or talk to someone in your house about it, okay? And I will see everyone tomorrow for another writing lesson. Bye, Year 1 or Year 2.